All right, welcome to the Cross Points podcast. I'm so glad you're joining us today. I am here with Pastor Nick Adams, our youth pastor here at Cross Points Church. Pastor Nick, welcome to the program.
Pastor David Jones and everyone. Good to be on the program.
So glad you're here. The podcast. Yes. Well, hey, I am so glad you're here because I would love to hear about your story. The world out there wants to know your story, Pastor Nick. They want to know about you. So,
all right.
How did you find yourself at Cross Points Church? How was it that you ended up the youth pastor here at Cross Points?
Cross Points Church.
Yes.
You know Pastor David, but they don't know.
They do not.
I grew up in this church. So I think my parents came here when I was 5 years old. Wow. So I grew up in the children's ministry here.
This is the church that you grew up in. You know how unusual that is?
I know.
Wow.
I grew up in this church, children's ministry.
Yep.
I remember being back there and raising my hand, give my life to the Lord.
Oh, yeah. That's good.
20 times. 20 times. I went forward every time.
You were one of those kids.
I was. Every time I went forward.
You just love Jesus.
And I love Jesus. Right. And I just didn't want to miss the opportunity. And I remember one Sunday, Pastor Rod Shima Bakura.
Oh, say that 3 times fast.
Pastor Rod Shima Bakura.
He's awesome. Pastor Rod, you're awesome if you're ever watching. That's so good.
I remember he looks at me, and seriously, it may have been the 20th time, and he looks at me and he goes, "Haven't you been up here before?"
and what'd you say?
And I looked at it and I'm like, "No, totally lied. What a terrible thing."
He's going up to raise his hand, and he's like, "Nope."
My first action was to deny Jesus as a
Oh,
Christian.
my goodness. Nope, I haven't done it, really.
Nope. And then that was the last time I went for it. Okay. I figured that was like my official, I'm caught. I better officially give my life to the Lord.
That's awesome. I love it. Such a great story.
So then, was raised here, and then junior high, you wouldn't believe this. I'm the youth pastor, but junior high, I was a pretty shy kid.
See, if you don't know Pastor Nick, he's pretty, let's just say, expressive. It's always a party with Pastor Nick.
So junior high,
yes, but you were not that way in junior high.
I was a little bit shy around bigger groups.
Okay,
and when I was comfortable in my smaller groups, then I would let the crazy go.
Got it. Okay.
So I never really wanted to go to our youth ministry. So I graduated children's ministry in junior high. I was like, heck no, techno. I'm not going to that youth ministry. It wasn't here at the church. It was, do you remember Zoe House?
Yes, it was off campus.
75th.
And Neiman. Right.
And it was in a strip mall warehouse. Yeah. And they had skating ramps there.
Oh yeah, Pastor Clint had put this whole thing together. It was really a pretty cool thing.
It was an awesome
he did a great
ministry,
job.
and it was totally reaching the lost.
Yeah.
There'd be kids that would be smoking cigarettes outside, and I'd walk through and be like, "Hey guys." And so, but as little church boy, Adams, shy kid, that was an overwhelming experience for me. And my parents, they would about once a month, they'd be like, "Hey, time to go."
You gotta go. Really? I don't want to do this.
Time to go, and they kept pushing me to go. And my sophomore year, Pastor David, my parents pushed me to go into summer camp.
Ooh. And good for them, though.
I know.
Good for them.
They said, "Hey, you're going on this summer camp." And I'm like, "Well, I'm not going alone then." And so I invited 5 of my friends.
No way. Are you serious?
Friends. They were totally unsaved. I think one was Hindu.
Wow.
One was Catholic. 2 of them were, 4 friends.
Okay.
And 2 of them were completely unsaved.
That's so
Matt,
cool.
Sean, Benny, and Steve.
He still remembers.
Crazy. So I invited them.
I wish more parents would do that with their kids. Hey, camp, it's a priority. You're going.
Yeah.
And then go ahead and bring your friends.
I'm not going alone. I don't know
love
anybody there. And so I went to the camp. Pastor Greg Hall was the youth pastor.
Pastor Greg, you're awesome.
Brand new. He had brought the youth ministry. They had shut down kind of the Zoe House and brought it back on campus.
Okay.
And so really had a connection there with him at summer camp.
Got it.
I also met a girl there. She invited me back on Wednesday night.
Let's just say, but let me pause here just for a second. So summer camp, you would say, was a pretty big deal for you. Was it a deal breaker in terms of your...
A deal maker.
Or deal maker, not a breaker.
Deal maker.
Sorry, deal maker.
Yeah, that was... like, let's not get it wrong. I thought the girl was cute, and I was like interested in the girl, and then I came back to you. But it was really at that camp, and I was just telling our students this at the week before our conference, our youth conference, just about how little expectations I had for that camp.
Right.
And I stood in the back, and I just had my hands in my pockets.
Right.
And I was not going to worship. And all my friends stood in the back
Kind of like
me.
the folding of the arms, like just make me worship Jesus.
Yeah, so all my friends are standing back there with me. And the craziest thing happened. I was the church kid, and one by one, my friends left me.
What?
And went up front to worship.
No way.
And all 4 of them gave their lives to the Lord. Like that weekend. Like,
come on.
Until I was the only one in the back.
The church kid in the back.
I was the only one. That was like, I remember the last one to go forward was my friend Chan. He's like, Nick, I'm going forward. And I'm like, all right, man, go. And I stood in the back, and I'm like, man, I'm by myself, like not worshiping Jesus.
Wow.
And so it was the last session. And
I've heard part of this.
Heard
I
part of this.
haven't heard the story about your friends, but now I know the song that you're gonna say right now. Aren't you going there?
Days of Elijah. YouTube it.
These are the days of Elijah,
preparing
the way of the Lord. We'll put it in the link.
It was a terrible, like, cheesy song, but
it's not terrible.
Okay. Well, listen, like
maybe right now
if we sing it.
Back then,
but like
awesome.
Back then, I remember like all the walls, like during that song, like came down that I'd been working so hard to keep up that weekend.
That's so good.
And I just legitimately felt the Holy Spirit like follow me. I started dancing like in the back, and
so good,
like white boy dancing. I was like jumping off the walls. I was going for it. And I just remember that was the moment that, like, it was the deal maker for me. Like, I gave my life to the Lord in the children's ministry.
Yep.
I was a church kid.
Right.
But it was like, wow.
But
like,
this was like almost a semi-adult decision, right? Where you were just like, I'm going for it. This is why, and I have to say this because I'm a huge believer in camp as well. Parents, I'm going to look at you right now. I know we actually were just talking about this, not for the podcast, but just because we were having conversation. Pastor Nick's planning a youth camp this summer, and I'm a huge believer in camp. I think it's probably one of the top. It's your part of your big 3 or your core 3.
Our big 3.
Big 3.
Big 3.
It's huge. It's, I think, incredibly important for you to have your teenager go to camp. Seriously, go to camp. It's worth every penny, and if you can't afford it, talk to this man. We'll figure out a way for your teen to go.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just had to plug that.
But it's huge because it didn't take till the 7th session for me, right? And so it was because day and night, like, we were worshiping Jesus, hearing the gospel, hearing the message of why we should follow Jesus. And when you put yourself in that environment, you have to work really hard to ignore God. Yeah. You really do. Yeah. And so
it's like positive peer pressure in such a good way. And it's not pressure, but it's maybe the pressure of the Holy Spirit that's bringing that out of you. It's good. It's just so good.
So anyways, that was like the deal maker for me. Turned my life around. Like, I went back to my school, and sophomore through senior year, like, me and my friend Josiah were preaching the gospel. We were going to like elementary schools,
so good,
because we got involved with like SAD, Students Against Drunk Driving, and we would use that to preach the gospel. My senior year, got up in front of our entire school in an assembly. Yeah, okay,
slow down, share that, because this is a great story. Okay, you got to share this with everybody.
So me and Josiah, we got involved with Students Against Drunk Driving, and I showed up to one meeting, and they were like, "Who's going to be the president next year?"
No way.
I'll be the president next year.
Did you really? You raised your hand and said,
I'll be the president next year.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they're like, all 4? I was the president. I had been there for like 20 minutes. And so, but I was like, this is a great opportunity. Every assembly before the major dances, so homecoming, prom, WPA, the president of SAD would get up in front of the school and tell the school why they shouldn't drink and drive.
Right, okay.
And so my plan was not to do it at homecoming, not to do it at WPA, but my last one at prom, I was going to get up there and share the gospel.
So this would be right before you graduate.
Yes.
Your last
what can
for
they
all.
do? What can they do?
Can they kick you out?
You can't go up there anymore on the mic. Great. That was my last time.
That's awesome.
So we had this whole master plan, and I get up there my senior year.
How many students are there?
Over 2,000 at
Over
Shawnee Mission Northwest.
2,000 in the auditorium.
In the auditorium.
Okay.
And I share, hey.
Were you nervous?
Oh, I remember my knees were like knocking together, like legitimately, like they were I was trembling.
Wow.
And I get up there and I say, I've been talking the last couple assemblies about why you shouldn't drink and drive. Today I want to tell you why you shouldn't drink and drive and why you shouldn't drink and what that means for you. And so I told him there's a better purpose for their life, and that is Jesus. And so I'd like to say that they flooded down.
I was going to say, what happened? Did the teacher say anything? Did any students say anything? What happened?
Nope. I just gave like the moment, and I prayed the prayer.
You prayed the prayer
Prayed a prayer. I kept it quick because they might have taken the mic from me, so I kept it quick and snappy and walked off, and like wasn't huge revival, but like I was faithful to like what it was that I felt like I was calling me.
That's so cool.
So then went away to college, played college baseball.
Yep.
And all along, like I was helping lead Campus Crusade for Christ. I thought maybe there was a future in baseball for me.
Sure.
That ended up not panning out, though I played Division I baseball for 4 years.
I mean, Division I, so that's like the top tier collegiate ball, right?
Yeah, and I did good. Like I had some really like solid years. My junior year was my best year.
Now, you've told me before you thought you were going to actually get drafted, or the possibility of a draft for you was really real.
So after my junior year, they were sending paperwork from different clubs. So my junior year was my best year.
Okay. What clubs? Just so we can say.
So like the New York Mets had sent me one.
Okay.
The Phillies had sent me something.
This is the legit right here.
Yeah,
okay.
And so like I was filling. I think there was 5 major teams that were looking at me. I'm filling out these paperwork. Pastor David, the paperwork is crazy. They're doing like mental, psychological evaluations. You're filling out like 20 pages of like personality profiles and like because if they're going to draft you in the major leagues, they're gonna,
if they're going to invest millions of dollars, they want to know. Yep. Okay, so what happens?
My senior year, I had a great summer that year. Played like 62 games in 2 months.
That's a ton of
Nevada,
games.
Missouri, playing semi-pro ball.
And you were just crushing it.
I was doing awesome that summer. Injured my arm. Came back, got mono in January. Thanks, Desiree. In January, and I had to take like a month off, and so I just came back, and I just wasn't myself. Like I was healthy by the time the season started,
but I had mono too. When I was 40, and it really changes you.
I lost 15 pounds.
Yeah.
And I just didn't have the pop. So I think I'd hit double-digit home runs the year before, or 9 or 10 home runs. And I only hit like 2 or 3 my senior year.
Wow.
And so, when scouts look at your stats, I still had like a good bottom line, for a good year.
But they were looking at your curve,
they're looking at the curve,
down,
right? And so, that was it. That was all she wrote. By the time the draft came around, I just knew. I knew that I wasn't going to get drafted. I didn't even watch the draft. I was like, nope, not going to happen.
I bet that was crushing.
It was. I had a moment. We were playing at the Metrodome in Minneapolis.
Oh, come on.
Which was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
We were playing Minnesota Gophers.
Okay.
And I'm in the hotel room, and I just had a terrible weekend. Like, I had struck out. And I'm sitting in the hotel room. We have a guy sleeping in the queen bed with me, 2 guys over there, and I'm crying like in the bed because
no, Pastor Nick, a college guy crying in the bed
because I realized like this was my dream, and I just knew like I had clarity in that. I still had a month of baseball left,
but you knew.
But I just knew in that moment that it was over, and that there had to be something else around the corner. So.
Wow. So your baseball dream dies.
It died.
And now what are you going to do with your life? That had to be flooding through your mind. Like, oh, now what?
Yep. And I was...
Because did you have visions of like, I'm going pro, I'm going to be, this is what I'm going to do?
Desiree and I were engaged.
Okay.
We purposely planned our wedding for September because that's the end of the minor league season. That's how sure we were.
Wow.
So I come back. I tell her, you're going to stay in South Dakota.
Okay.
I'm going to come back to Kansas City. I'm going to figure out life for us. We're going to get married in September.
And you're how old are you?
And I'm 22 years old.
You're going to figure it all out.
I got this.
He's going to figure it out.
There's a job waiting for me
I'm sure there's a
in Kansas City. I'm sure of it. Although I had no idea. I get back home, I open up the newspaper, Pastor David.
No, that is old school. You're opening up the newspaper.
Circling job ads, and there's a sports...
This is like a movie.
There's a sports marketing ad there, and I'm like, awesome, this is for me. This is fantastic. And I go to the job. Long story short, it was horrific. Like, it was not putting together these awesome marketing plans. It was somebody else did that, and I was going door to door sales with this guy, selling at businesses. It said no soliciting, and he would wait till somebody goes in, and he would go in the business and would go to cubicle to cubicle.
No.
I was so embarrassed. At lunch, they were supposed to be wining and dining me, and they took me to McDonald's. And I'm like, I want to leave right now.
You mean McDonald's didn't win you over?
Yeah, I wanted to leave, but he drove, so I had to stick out the whole day. I get there, this is supposed to be my first day on job. I get in the car and I drive. I leave. I don't even tell them I'm not coming back. I'm like, they don't even deserve. That was they had pulled the wool over my eyes, and
so much for that career.
Yep.
So now you have to figure out, what in the world am I going to do?
So that very night, we went to California Pizza Kitchen with our college ministry.
Yes.
We were there.
Yes.
So I had applied for this sports marketing job. I had also applied for a couple other youth pastor jobs.
Right.
I didn't know anything about ministry. I applied at Overland Park First Assemblies of God, which I didn't know that First Assemblies of God has their own track. Phil Kryling was the senior pastor.
Yeah, we did a podcast with him back in the day. You can go back and watch it. He was the pastor, right?
Phil, yeah.
Did he call you back?
He never called me back.
Phil, you never called him back.
Not even an email. But I get it. I had no credentials.
Right.
So I
Phil
totally
looked at it and was like, who is this guy?
Who is this guy? Okay. South Dakota State. Speech communications.
Yeah.
And so
funny.
Anyways, that night, Pastor David found out, I think from my friend Marcus, that I had been applying for other youth pastor jobs. We had one at the church, and he came and he cornered me and goes, "You are applying." This is how I remember it. You cornered me and go, "You are applying for other youth ministry jobs?"
I remember that. I was like, what? What are you doing? I mean, come on. We love you. You've been in our church for such a long time, and you haven't even thought to apply at Cross Points?
Yep.
Come on.
So,
come on.
Anyways, so long story short, you said
I was like, come on, apply. I think I know somebody that might, help,
And he pushed it through. I applied July 1st. August 1st, 2008 was my starting date.
2008. Man, going to be 12 years.
Woo! This is the 12th year.
Wow.
Youth ministry.
That's awesome.
It's fantastic.
So you've been a youth pastor for 12 years now. 11 and a half years.
11 and a
Let's
half.
call it 12.
Yeah.
12. You've been here 12 years.
Round up, pastor numbers.
Okay, so let's think about let's talk about youth ministry in general.
Yep.
And what would you tell parents as a youth pastor? What would be the number one thing that you would tell parents that you would want them to know as a youth pastor? Yep. I know that's very, very broad, but what's the thing that burns on your heart that you want to tell them?
The number one thing I think is probably more of a broad vision of youth ministry and why youth ministry and what our purpose is.
Okay.
And so for me, the main thing is that the youth ministry is not a replacement for the home.
Okay, say that one more time.
The youth ministry is not a replacement for the home. Okay. So I'm sure we have listeners that are superstar parents, or we have some that are just trying to figure it out.
Right.
We have a broad range of parents.
Sure.
But to recognize that the youth ministry is not a replacement for the home. The home is what lays the foundation. And us as the local church and the youth ministry will help lay the foundation if it's not there at home. But it's really important, especially parents that are believers and they're trying their best to follow what God's plan is, to recognize that you're the most important foundation that you could possibly lay.
That's right.
In your kid's life. Because whatever time we spend with them, you spend far more time with them. So how you teach them, how you handle conflict with them, how you deal with them with grace and some justice, right? At times there's all sorts of that. But recognizing that we're supposed to be, as a youth ministry, supplemental and in tandem with what parents do at home.
Right.
And if need be, we'll help lay whatever we can if there's not that home life. But and with that, I think, Pastor Dave, I've heard different parenting philosophies, and I think the one thing that I would like to say along with that is that we're not a replacement for the home,
right?
But we're really vital. Like as a youth ministry and a local church, we're pretty crucial in the lives
in the development
students.
of our students to really love God for a lifetime.
Yeah.
I mean, I just have to jump in and say something. Like youth ministry for me was monumental. Like it really helped drive the course of my life, not just in ministry, but in my walk with God. These years are so critical. And I think that's what you're trying to say.
Totally. And I've heard the mindset from different parents, and I just don't necessarily agree with this, the philosophy that what we do at home and how we teach our kids or raise our kids, that should be enough.
Right.
And then if they get good grades, we're in Johnson County. So we get good grades and go to college. Like those are the two most important things. And then local church and youth ministry is almost secondary, if not optional.
Right.
Optional is one of the things that I've heard, and
I've heard it too. Seriously, from a lot of parents, and it really grieves me.
Yeah.
And I've challenged multiple parents on that issue. I'm just like, the local church is so critical to the development, and youth ministry in particular for teens is absolutely essential.
Yeah, I mean, so using that philosophy of like foundation, right? At the home, you build the foundation.
Yep.
And then I believe that without the local church or a youth ministry to help, then your kids are not going to have a full spectrum of how to build that house on that foundation. And so like we give ministry opportunities, but also we come alongside. And typically, Pastor David, it's the superstar parents that have that philosophy, right?
Yeah.
Like when I go running with parents that are like, I don't know how to raise my kid, they're the ones that are like hungry for that support. And their students are the ones that are thriving, even though they don't have that. They have the parent that's like,
help me. They know that they need it.
Yeah, and like in that humility, God works because they're reaching out. It's typically the superstar parents that that like I would say, man, you are on it. You know way more than me, right? Like, and they'd say, well, what we do is all they need, and if they get good grades, then if they have time. But I mean, what I've seen with that, and I'll just speak from my experience. My parents were superstar parents.
Right. Okay.
They were. My dad was teaching me. My mom was praying for me.
Right.
I would wake up in the morning. My dad's downstairs praying for me. Okay. Like in the morning, I would come home at Friday night at 2 a.m, and my dad was awake, reading the Bible with one lamp on. Like it was very very eerie. He's just like, well, son, did you have a good night?
That's awesome.
Was it a holy and righteous night?
I can totally see your dad say that too.
He was keeping me accountable, but that was not enough for me.
Right.
I really believe this. If it wasn't for Pastor Greg and this youth ministry, I definitely wouldn't be a pastor today.
Right.
And I question whether I would have found Jesus.
Wow.
At least in the way that I did.
Yep.
And then began to lead the way that I did.
Okay, so I'm going to just take you a little bit deeper dive. Why? Tell me why that is the case.
Yeah, so for me, Pastor Greg came alongside me and he became a mentor. My dad was also a mentor. So again, the youth ministry is not replacing the home, right?
Your dad was still critical in your life.
My dad and my mom were super crucial in my life.
Okay.
But Pastor Greg played another role, a supplemental role, not a replacement dad, but he played a supplemental role that I could talk to him about things that I wouldn't talk to my parents. And, I know their parents are like, my kid tells me everything.
No, they don't.
No, they don't. They don't.
They don't.
I'm sorry. And that's, it's okay. Like, you're their parents.
It's actually healthy, I think. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, you're their parents, not their pastor.
That's right.
Right? And like, there's different roles that different people play.
For sure.
And so Pastor Greg came alongside me. It was also a community where I saw there's other people that are walking the same path.
So good.
And with me being in the jock culture, baseball culture, like, especially when I got to college, to know that there was other people that like believed it helped me to stand firm in what I believed and how I lived out my life. And in college, that was huge to know that the church was there for me. I had friends that were there for me, and I could live in this other world where everyone else is making different decisions.
Exactly.
But then I could say, but I know that that's not, I'm not alone.
Right.
Right? And I think that's just huge.
That's really good. Okay, so now we're talking to parents and grandparents maybe that are out there, and they say, okay, great. I get it. The youth ministry needs to be supplemental, and I'm in. But I've got so much on my plate. I've got sports. I've got all these activities, and I'm running from place to place. I just don't have the time. That's probably the number one thing that I hear from parents that say they just don't have the time. How would you answer that?
So I would just answer it. I know that I always find it hard to answer this question because they're like, oh, you're the youth pastor. Of course you believe that. So I'm going to jump back to when I was a student.
Okay.
I was in the most competitive baseball arena possible. I was playing club teams. I was traveling every weekend.
Right. So you were even back then you were traveling.
I played spring, summer, fall. Baseball.
That's a lot.
Like competitive baseball, looking to get recruited. My dream was to go to Wichita State.
Right.
Play baseball, which I did, which was awesome.
Huge.
But for me, I knew that my parents didn't tell me this. I just knew that for me, I needed to prioritize Wednesday nights. I needed to prioritize being a part of the youth ministry.
Okay.
And even spring break trips. So we practiced during spring break. And for our Shawnee Mission Northwest varsity team, and I would say, I'm going to go away with my youth ministry on spring break. Summer camps, I would miss a summer of critical baseball each year. I prioritize Wednesday nights and those big experiences along the way.
But I'm going to stop here just for the practical sake. You approached the coach,
I approached the coach of whatever team I was on, and I said, I will play in games on Wednesday nights, but I will not practice after 6:30 on Wednesday nights, because I've got commitments in my youth ministry, and it's going to help me be the person I want to be.
Right.
And so, Pastor David, I think the one statistic that is just so shocking to me is we put all this effort and energy into clubs and sports and Christian schools and all this stuff.
Huge.
I'll just say this about sports and athletics. Do you know what percentage of high school athletes make it to the collegiate level?
I don't know, 20, 30%?
Less than 2%. So all that effort that we put into our college athlete, or our students being these awesome athletes and playing all these sports and doing all these great things, less than 2%.
2%.
And I bet you statistics are similar with drama, with all sorts of other clubs, right? Less than 2%. So we are prioritizing all these things.
Wow, that's huge.
All these things that will die at the end of their high school life. Christian school kids, I see this all the time. They've turned the Christian school into the church.
Right, yes.
The problem with that is that dies at the end of the year. They'll have their relationships, but they won't have the chapels. They won't have the discipleship groups, right?
Yeah, and Christian schools are good. You're not knocking that. But you're just saying the longevity of it, it's going to end their senior year.
Totally. And so we're pushing our students to prioritize all these things it's on a shot clock that will end. And we wonder why our students have a hard time when they graduate high school to sticking to their faith. It's because everything we've taught them to invest into is over.
Man, there's a sermon in that. Let me tell you, I'm serious.
But the local church and youth ministry ends.
Yep.
But we as a church, we have a plan for students to stay connected and to have a life outside of high school.
Absolutely.
And so I think we have such a faulty perspective when it comes to the local church and prioritizing what is supposed to be the most important. And I know that sounds crazy. Yeah, prioritize Wednesday nights and have your kid in competitive sports, take time off for a week for summer camp. It sounds crazy because we've been hearing a different message from all of our coaches.
Sure.
And we've
not just coaches, but culture tells us this is what you got to do.
And so I know it sounds like a radical philosophy, but at the end of the day, if we don't approach God with a radical philosophy that we're giving him all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, then we're preaching the opposite, which is, just give God what you can.
Right.
Give God what you can.
Yeah.
And for me, making that commitment in my high school life transformed who I was and who I am today. And I really want parents to understand that I think we need to reprioritize what it is that we're doing. Not that church is our relationship with God. That if you walk away from this podcast with that is a wrong mentality.
That's not what we're talking about here.
No, but we're saying that prioritizing things that invest into our spiritual walk.
And that's the word I wanted to say. The investment for local church youth ministry is huge, and it pays off big dividends, not just within your high school career, but all the way past that. College, young adults, young married with kids, all of that. That's what the local church does. So if we can put down roots, we talk about this at Cross Points Church, put down roots.
Yep.
Don't go from place to place. Invest. And we do that with our teenagers as well. Invest. Make it a priority.
Pastor David, that's why I've been doing this for close to 12 years, because I've seen it. I've seen students that their lives have been transformed because they've committed to the things that invest into them and that God invests into.
That's good. Okay, we've gone a little bit long, but I want to ask one more question because I think the next question is pretty critical too. Okay, so I know that I need to be in youth ministry. 2, okay, my priorities need to change. But man, what about my kid? My kid is shy. They don't know anybody. And you want me to like dump them into our student ministry center and they don't know anyone. Like seriously, like I think that's a legitimate concern.
Yes.
How would you answer that?
I would say that their feelings are legitimate, by the way.
Okay.
Like how I felt when I was a junior higher, that's legit.
Yeah.
But in every other area of life, we push our kids.
Okay.
Seriously.
Yeah,
in
you're
every
other.
It's
so good. That's a great point.
My son the other day said, "Dad, I don't want to go to the basketball game," and I said, "Tough luck. We paid for it, and Grandma and Grandpa are coming to watch. So like, go out there, do your best, right?" And so like we've kind of just cushioned our kids. We're like, "Ooh, I don't want to push them too hard when it comes to matters of faith because I want it to be their own faith." But at the same time, and I understand that tension, we have to be able to push a little bit. So here would be this is my framework.
Okay.
I always say this.
This is good.
Listen. We tried to set a framework for our youth ministry. We have 3 big events a year.
Okay.
Those are the times to push them.
Okay.
Okay. Push them to go on those.
Push them. Big 3.
The big 3.
Parents, make sure if you have teenagers that they're in these 3 things.
Youth conference, summer camp, fall retreat. Big 3. Okay.
Summer camp is when?
Is the last week of June.
Last week of June, and then fall retreat.
20th through the 27th.
Ooh, 20 to 27. Get your kids there. Okay. And then fall retreats
is the middle of October.
Okay.
So like I think it's 14th through the 16th, something like that.
By the way, my kids have gone to the fall retreat. We haven't been able to do the summer camp yet because we just haven't done that. But the fall retreat, huge, absolutely huge. Developing relationships, all that. I can't speak enough about that.
So those 3 markers will help them to stay consistently involved and
it makes them feel a part.
Makes them feel a part, but also they're like big spiritual experiences where it gives God an opportunity to knock and see if they'll answer.
That's
right.
Good. Okay.
So then on the weekly basis, I would say we do multiply nights, which are 8 times a year, every 6 weeks, and those are I tell parents that's your hey. Get there. We put a ton of time and investment into those nights being big nights.
So push your kids beyond their comfortability zone.
Yeah.
Push them to be there.
Yeah.
Because they're going to have a fun time anyways. They really are.
And I think, depending on where your kid are, maybe you can't push them every week and you don't want to be that broken record, right?
Yeah.
And we don't want students that are coming in like, why are we here? I don't want that at all. No, for the most part, on Wednesday nights, you can tell the students that are there really want to be there.
Totally.
And so,
but hold it, multiply night. Sorry, you're having a multiply night coming up. And I think it's pretty cool.
So it's Candyland.
What is Candyland?
What kid doesn't like candy?
He's pulling up the info here. Okay.
Well, I just want to make sure it's the 15th.
Okay, we think it's the 15th.
April 15th.
April 15th. It's tax day.
Tax day.
Tax day. Get some candy. Okay, great. No, seriously, my sons loved that last year.
Yeah.
You have 60 pounds of candy here. I don't know.
80 pounds of candy, I think.
80 pounds of candy. Yeah, get your kid there. Okay.
Yeah. So, anyways, I would push them to multiply nights, and then 1 or 2 Wednesday nights in between, continue to push them, and then I believe that they'll find their way,
right?
And then they'll be like, I want to come,
right? Okay.
Also, last thing, I know we're going a little long.
Okay.
If your student comes alone,
that's the big thing.
We have a host team, When I would show up to Zoe house, I would walk in. I had one kid I knew. He talked to me for about 10 seconds. Then he buzzed around and did all sorts. His name was Matt Gordon. And he would just, and he would just go talk to everyone. And I was alone. And that is
so
not
you had
the
you had the introduction. Someone said, "Hi, how are you?" But then you're all by yourself.
And so,
you don't do that.
No, I want people that come to our youth ministry to be worshiping with someone, sitting with somebody, to never feel like I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
So good.
And so we host brand new students, especially if they come alone. If they come with a group, we'll let them hang out with their group, right? But if they come alone, they will not be alone.
It's so good.
If they come alone, they will not be alone.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So really, there's no excuse. I mean, come on, you are making it so easy for kids with the big three and the core three and all that kind of. It's really good. So, well, I think that's about all that we have for today. Right. I wish we could have more time because I know there's a lot of other things we could talk about, which I think I want to bring you back on at some point, and we'll talk some more. But hey. For today, thanks so much for joining us. We're so glad that you were with us today. Hey, make sure you subscribe. Hit and smash the like button. That's what my boys always say. Smash that like button, okay? And we'll see you next week. Pastor Nick, thanks for joining us.
Pastor David, it was great to have you. Good. I mean, great to be on.
Whatever. Yes.
Whatever, however it works.